Another in our series for the by-election coming up, and with me is Leslie Hanson, who is standing in Peel. And of course, Leslie, no stranger to the hustings. You've been there before.
This is a by-election. I took part in the last general election in 2011.
It was quite close, wasn't it?
31 votes.
So you're coming back?
Yes.
Is your manifesto the same, basically? We've got a copy here. I mean,
yeah.
You saying the same things?
A lot of things are the same. There are other things based on information which is now come to light between 2011 and now, particularly regarding the Manx Electricity Authority and what happened to the 392 million. Why wasn't it being paid for? Why didn't the MEA receive a telecoms licence from the Telecommunications Commission? The report about the MEA has come out and it is in the manifesto. I believe that the MEA should be given a licence. It is the Manx government. It's ridiculous the Manx government won't give itself a telecoms licence. And yet, unfortunately, the late Mr Baggs, a 27-year-old, was given a telecoms licence. If they did get a licence, it would mean the Isle of Man would have a very high-tech telecoms company. This would, the cash flow from this would provide finance to pay off the debt for the refurbishment of a new power station, and we could have reduced electricity prices. But only if that happens, and if I do get elected, I will be pushing this. I think it's very important for the Isle of Man's economy and its future.
I should ask you, of course, why you want to stand again. I mean,
I think things can be done better.
Yeah. Okay. Preschools, and another one here well, let's deal with preschool. You say Lib Van should never have abolished the preschool education.
As I said in the manifesto, it's in the interest of every economy to ensure every economically active person is in the workforce, paying taxes, both direct and indirect. Parents that want to go to work are paying £120 a week plus for for preschool now, because it's not free. And for people on perhaps who are wanting to go into a higher income job, that's one thing. But people going into perhaps a lower income job, it means that they end up working for about £3 an hour by the time they've paid off the care costs. So it's a big disincentive for people to get back into work.
I see that the Peel railway line has made almost your first page.
Again.
Is that really top priority though? I mean,
I believe that this summer has demonstrated if we want a diverse economy and we want to get more income from tourism, well, the one thing we cannot market ourselves on anymore is the sunny Isle of Man. The only way we're going to get people here, because the Isle of Man is not a low-cost area as regards the service sector, is a theme tourism. The railways, very popular in the UK. Nearly every private railway is making a profit. I personally was involved in preventing development on the St John's rail track bed of the Peel railway line and the Ramsey railway line. I turned up to the planning meeting, nobody bothered turning up. I wrote to Peel commissioners, no one was interested. I ended up facing 4 civil servants, it was the LGB, my lawyer and myself, and after 2 hours I got the 2 bits of track bed removed from the plan in St John's, and now the line to Peel and Ramsey is now secure for one day in the future being relayed again.
Really? So it's now doable?
It's doable.
But at a big cost, and you'd be prepared to see that sort of money being spent on that?
Not by government. If the business plan for nearly all private railways in the UK are charity trusts.
So would you see the whole of the network put into a charitable trust then?
I think that could be a future thing. I think there will be scope for money to be put in from the government, but I think it could be run more efficiently, and we could put a cap on the cost to government if the whole thing was turned into a private charity trust, because across in the UK they've been very successful.
And where do you take this? Pulling out of other things like running the Villa Marina, running other things that should be in the private sector?
Now you're getting into another area here, because really railways are very much a charity historic thing.
Just trying to see where you stand on...
No. I don't think it would apply to a lot of things, but I think it has worked in railways. I think the best thing to do is not experiment. We know for a fact charity trusts work in the UK very well for railways, so I think it should be applied to railways, but other things, no.
How do you feel this government's done over the last 4 years now, such?
The Manx government has had an inordinate supply of money when the times were good. They have just spent it if there's no tomorrow. Now they're in a situation where they're asset stripping. You see government buildings up for sale at the bottom of the market, because you know how things aren't moving at the moment. And now they're trying to get money in everywhere possible to try and balance the books. We should now move forward and start looking at things very carefully where we're spending money, and also look at ways of generating money without massive capital investment.
I mean, could you work with the government if you got in? What do you think of Alan Bell and his administration as such? As Coman, do you support them, or would you be a bit rebel? Or
meet where you touch? Mm-hmm. Meet where you touch.
I mean, recently there's been this big plan to reduce the commitments to work permits and the legislation needed to get. Now, in here, you're saying you need it to be much tougher to get a work permit. So you're at odds there with their thoughts.
Very much so. I mean, we have people in the Isle of Man who are working part-time and on low wages. And we've seen the economic disaster of a non-work permit situation in the UK, where you have 700,000 jobs created in the last 5 years with the last Conservative government. Yet the tax take has not gone up, because when you get an unlimited supply of cheap labour from Eastern Europe, the minimum wage becomes the maximum wage. And I'll give you a statistical fact bearing this out. Between 2010 and 2014, the number of working people in the United Kingdom earning less than £400 a week went up by 1 million. And that is why in the last budget, the UK Chancellor pushed up the minimum wage, because he knows he's in an economic downward spiral with low wages. We have to have permits to raise the lower wage to a reasonable level to get a tax take in. Because people below a certain wage, it means someone coming in, they're entitled to benefits, children at school. It's costing us money bringing people in. And we have people here who want to work and can't.
So you would be definitely against what they're trying to do here then?
Definitely. I mean, someone told me it works out that if you take the average family, someone needs to be on about £800 a week to make it actually worth the while to bring them into the Isle of Man by the time they collect all the benefits and the cost of the health services. And they're talking about bringing people in at far less than that.
And you're talking about personal tax in here, about changing the allowances.
Now, the allowances, I had this in my last manifesto, I've got in this one. And it's particularly relevant now because my policy was, it's all in there, a variable personal allowance. Now, the Manx government has brought in legislation which I think comes in April, and they are raising the personal allowance, I think, to about 13,000 from about 9,300. But at the same time, the first 10,000, which normally was rated 10% tax, has now been rated to 20%. So it's giving it in one hand and taking it with the other. And in actual fact, it doesn't do a lot. In some ways, the middle incomes are worse off.
Very quickly, because we're talking about time. Irish scheme, you want to scrap that?
The Irish scheme, the main Irish scheme, has already been scrapped. We know that. It is now turning into mini Irish schemes. What I'm saying is there are other ways of doing it, which happens in the UK, and I am worried, particularly in Peel, with regard to Peel, that once this Irish scheme, if it gets built in Peel, the running costs will be handed over to Peel commissioners. And I just don't think we can afford to pay for it.
Okay. I mean, there's loads more in this.
I know.
Do you see yourself as a member of the national government, or would you be focusing on local issues as such, or how do you see it?
Well, it's both. When you enter as a member of the House of Keys, you're representing your constituency.
Would you like to be a minister at some point, or would you like to be in charge of things? Would you like to be a future chief minister?
The future is there.
You're not ruling anything out?
I don't rule anything out.